Welcome to the First Things First podcast. And first things first, we need you to subscribe and leave comments letting us know what you think of the show. We're listening. I'm Nick Wright, joined by two of my favorite people, Jenna Wolf, Chris Carter. Now, let's get the show started.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolf. That's the Hall of Famer, Chris Carter. That is Nick Wright. We are already off to a great start this morning. I have no idea.
Who knows? Listen, we know why. If Chris Carter stumbles through a few words early, it's because he was up late celebrating his Ohio State Buckeyes with a big win over the Purdue Boilermakers, one of the hottest teams in college basketball. We don't do a ton of college basketball on this show.
Correct.
But Chris watched that game. Jen and I were up watching the greatest player of all time hit a game winner, which I know we're going to get into. So
like 8 minutes ago, if you were watching that game.
Right.
And the Cavaliers are back, Nick. Nick is in a good mood this morning.
Well, we'll see.
Let us do that right now. Let's start with the best game on the NBA schedule last night. Hands down, bar none, no doubt, Cavs and T-Wolves, and a ton of late drama. After over 52 minutes and 276 points of basketball, LeBron James decided to do the thing he hasn't done in weeks, take matters into his own hands. Swatted away an attempted game winner from Jimmy Butler on one end, and then moments later, the fadeaway game winner to end it. I haven't seen the team happy in a long time. All part of a 37-point, 15-assist, 10-rebound performance out of LeBron James. One so beautiful, it brought Nick Wright to tears. Here is LeBron James after the game.
But it was a great win for us. We needed this after that tough loss last night in Orlando. Our fans were unbelievable. Our guys stuck with it even though they were shooting the heck out of the ball. Man, they shot 58% from the field, and we were still able to get a win. But when we play Cavaliers basketball tonight, that's all we can ask.
So that is all well and good, and it's lovely, but you wonder if it masks what's coming up at 3 p.m. today, CC, which is the NBA trade deadline. Should what happened last night have any impact on that deadline whatsoever?
No, not unless LeBron's going to go to him and waive his no trade, and they get a bunch of picks and some other players for him. No, I don't think it's going to change anything. I think that the Cavs they're limited in the amount of changes they can make because they're not going to offer the Brooklyn pick. When they decide not to offer the Brooklyn pick, there's not a lot of teams that are going to do business with the Cavs. Not because they don't like their other pick, but because they know that they have better. They know that the Cavs are strapped and that they have to make some type of move. So they're going to try to get the best pick out of them. So I don't believe there's a whole bunch that the Cavs can do. Lou Williams signs a contract extension with the Clippers. So I believe that limits their options. I believe he was the best player. They can get an off guard who could score the basketball or get someone else who can play some defense. Avery Bradley potentially, but no, I don't believe this changes anything. I hope it changes the overall psyche of the Cavs, which is more important than what's going to happen at the trade deadline.
If they right now or going into last night were insistent, we are not trading the Brooklyn pick, then yes, last night was a good reminder as to how ridiculous of a strategy that is. Because last night was a reminder, oh yeah, right now, this moment, we have the guy who's head and shoulders the best basketball player in the world. Guy who hit a game-tying three at the tail end of regulation, hit a game-tying layup at the tail end of overtime, followed that up with a game-saving block, and then a game-winning jump shot. That's what LeBron did yesterday. And right now, that Brooklyn pick, that coveted Brooklyn pick that you can't even consider getting rid of in order to help your team potentially win a title this year, that Brooklyn pick has an 85% chance as we sit here today to be 7, 8, or 9 in the draft. A 15% chance to be in the top 3. If they finish with the 7th worst record in basketball, which is where they're at now, that's what it'll be. So a little history lesson for Dan Gilbert, who I know has been a GM for all of 15 minutes now, so maybe he's not familiar with it. Here are the types of players you can draft at 7, 8, 9. Ben McLemore, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Trey Burke. Is that your escape route when LeBron leaves? How about the next year? How about Julius Randle, Nick Stauskas, or Noah Vonleh? Which one of those guys are you holding on to for when LeBron leaves? What about the year after that? How about Willie Cauley-Stein, Emmanuel Mudiay, or Stanley Johnson? Any of those guys, your team's saviors? The idea that this Brooklyn pick is this Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory golden ticket that you just can't get rid of, your only objective should be to tried to entice LeBron to stay by winning a title this year. To have an escape plan from that is to say my handmade parachute from 30,000 feet is my escape plan from this plane. It makes no sense. So last night was a good reminder of what they have right now and what they potentially could lose.
First of all, speaking of last night, Cece, what did they do differently? Why did last night look differently than the previous, 20 games that they've played, that they haven't been able to get back on track?
No, last night didn't look different. Last night, only part of the game looked different. That's offensively. They put the ball in the bucket. Besides defensively, look at the stat sheet. They give up the number of points they give up. Their possessions, they have some awful possessions. Sometime on defense, they don't help. LeBron got the block at the end. Yeah, they were helping, but they're not connected together. People talking about when you play great defense, they say it's as if all players are on one string. Man, if the string that the Cavs are on defensively is a yo-yo. It's up, it's down, it's up. Like, you can't depend on that. So also you see that IT, he's very, very limited offensively. He's a detriment defensively. So they're still the same thing. Kyle Korver hit shots. LeBron kind of took over the game in the way LeBron only can, but it was about hitting shots, and Kyle Korver was able to give him the support that he needed.
I'm going to disagree slightly. I think there's one thing that we have to, going into last night's game, we should have done a better job acknowledging, which is where this team's really been awful is on the road. Last 26 games, right? 1-11 on the road, and going into last night, 9-4 at home. So they had been pretty good at home already, and last night was at home. But the other thing they did differently last night is they didn't force IT into the lineup. Jetty Osman was getting fourth quarter minutes. As you could see last night, because that was a game they needed and a game they could win against a good basketball team that was at full strength. That Timberwolves team is a good team, was a favorite in Cleveland last night. And they did what they would do in a playoff game, I think.
From a coaching standpoint, the end of the game, they went offense, defense. They had Osman come in on defense. They had IT playing on the offensive end. So they exchanged possession. They exchanged the rotation that way more so than they had before.
And the first 6 minutes of the fourth quarter, IT did not play. LeBron James played the entirety of fourth quarter and overtime. So there were some, and you saw at the beginning of the fourth quarter, they did some things that they were doing when they won 18 of 19. LeBron and a bunch of role players. It was LeBron, Jeff Green, Channing Frye, Jetty Osman, and Kyle Korver. LeBron and some shooters. So that was a little different as opposed to trying to get LeBron and IT as many minutes together as possible on the same page. Because IT, once again, was awful on both ends of the court. IT hit a couple shots yesterday to raise his three-point percentage from 23%, now up to, I think, 26%. So that's step in the right direction. But it was, I agree with you, Cece, the defense didn't look a lot different. But some of the things Ty Lue did, after, by the way, IT criticized Ty Lue the day before, they did, to me, look a little different. After the game, they said Jetty Osman is going to play more, if for no other reason than he is a guy who is engaged defensively when the entire team seems to be disengaged.
Yeah, and he gives them more size.
Right.
I mean, he's more athletic and he has more size.
Did LeBron look more engaged last night than he had in weeks prior?
Of course.
Why? Does it have anything to do with the trade deadline coming up? Is there any connection there whatsoever? Why turn it on last night when...
No, I mean, he didn't turn it on. They did make some adjustments. Guys made shots, though. So LeBron is a momentum player, too. He will make the best basketball play, but if he does three-quarters of the things right and he throws the ball to an open guy and they miss shots, it's hard for him to continue to be optimistic when guys don't make shots, when guys don't play good team defense. So I wouldn't say that his overall attitude changed. He realized where this team was. They had already lost to Orlando the night before, as Nick said, to the worst team in the NBA. They couldn't afford to lose this game after playing fairly well throughout the game. Now, defensively, you still don't want to give up that many points, but they were getting offensively. Their offense was flowing. So I wouldn't say that he just turned it on. It was kind of he benefited from guys hitting shots. Right. Guys don't hit shots. Like LeBron can only do so much. It's not as if he wasn't engaged. When it became the critical times, LeBron did what he had to do. he made more of the selfish plays when he had to. And that was he had to shoot the three in regulation. He had to finish at the hole. He couldn't settle for a pull-up in overtime. And coming over in the help defense, he felt like when they switched that Jimmy Butler was going to take Osman one-on-one. So he read that, made the great block. JR rebounds it, calls the timeout, and he makes the big shot at the end.
And again, to bring it back to where we started before we move on, should this change what the Cavs do at the deadline? If the Cavs' plan going into last night, or as we sit here this morning, is to stand pat at the deadline, then I just want to make sure everyone understands. The Cavs, part of their plan, if their plan is to stand pat, they know they're losing LeBron James. They know they're losing. Forget if you agree with me, he's the best player ever. One of the 3 best players ever. We can walk one of the 5 best players ever. The best player in the history of your franchise, who, by the way, last night joined Kevin Garnett and Michael Jordan as the only players ever to lead a franchise all time in points, rebounds, and assists. If you stand pat at this deadline, he is walking out the door in a few months.
And by stand pat, do you mean anything shy of that Nets pick or IT or Kevin Love?
If they don't make a significant trade, the clock is ticking on your time with LeBron James. That is a guarantee. That's the decision up to Dan Gilbert. I'm very curious to see the one he makes in the next few hours.
Welcome back to First Things First. Yahoo Sports stud Chris Mannix is here, and let the games begin.
I don't know when the last time you've been a stud, brother. Welcome to the show.
You, brother. We were talking about Aaron Baines and the Celtics worried about, oh, my goodness. I cannot wait to see Mannix repeatedly from now until, assuming the Celtics can make it to the conference.
Right. Hey, man, don't try to filibuster the whole dang
thing.
No, it's okay. That was some championship defense I saw from Cleveland last night. Championship level defense. 58% from the floor, 58% from 3. That gets it done.
Love it. Speaking of getting done, Chris, if I'm being dramatic here, the Cavs live to see another day. If I'm being a realist, the Cavs won an amazing game last night over the T-Wolves. But in your opinion, only offensively amazing. They had lost 13 out of their last 19 leading up to that. Now the trade deadline is fast approaching, and everyone besides LeBron seems expendable. Despite popping up in trade rumors, Isaiah Thomas says he doesn't want to go anywhere.
Yeah, I'm tired of being traded. That's not a good thing, but I just want to be where I want to. And I like it here. It hasn't been as planned, but I definitely want to be here. We have a real chance to win the NBA championship, and I want to be a part of that.
Not sure, Chris, how much of that you believe, but whether or not the Cavs want to trade Isaiah, do they need to trade Isaiah? Does he offer them the most in return at this point?
No, because Isaiah's value is kind of what it is right now with that team. No. He's just, he's a guy recovering from a bad injury who doesn't defend at anywhere near a high level. And he's got a manageable contract, which is the only thing that makes him appealing. It expires at the end of the year. He's not the guy that teams want. But frankly, there's not a lot on that roster that teams are clamoring for. Right? I reported yesterday that they're still talking to Sacramento about a George Hill deal, but Sacramento's been offered the crap burger that is Iman Shumpert and J.R. Smith, and they're like looking back going, no, we don't want any part of that. So if you look up and down that roster, outside of LeBron James, who already said he's not waiving his no trade clause, and the Brooklyn Nets pick, which people inside the organization have told me they're not dealing, there's not much that they can.
Kevin Love is an asset that teams would like. He's a player.
He's okay. He's okay, but it's not like if you deal a Kevin Love. Look, you're talking about Isaiah Thomas, and you replace Isaiah with Calderon, who they were good with in December. Other guys. You deal Kevin Love, you better get what Kevin Love's giving you back. For as much as we malign Kevin Love,
right. That's part of the reason why they're struggling.
Yeah. Well, they were struggling. Look, they were struggling. I don't think that Kevin Love going out has led to them struggling, but he is a big part of what they do offensively, why they're so good. You better get something better than Kevin Love back in a deal.
Right. I don't think they're going to trade Kevin Love. My point is he's a guy that if he were available, teams would like. He's an all-star level player.
Well, he's available. Everybody's available on that team right now. It's just that they're not getting the kind of offers for Kevin Love right now that they got in the offseason last year.
IT says, I'm sick of being traded. Sometimes you got to look in the mirror, man. Like everyone, when he and Boogie didn't get along in Sacramento, everyone blamed Boogie. And listen, Boogie's got some emotional issues. I think we all know that. But it looks like Isaiah Thomas can be a tough guy to be around. Then he goes to Phoenix. That blows up immediately. Works well in Boston when everything revolves around him. He goes to Cleveland, and best I can tell, since he's been playing, he's called out Kevin Love. He's called out the team as a whole. Yesterday, he called out the coaching staff. And he has been, on a per-minute basis, the single worst player in the NBA. So I agree with you. He's not a big asset right now. But they might be better without him at the moment.
Well, I don't think it's fair to criticize him the way he's done, because I believe that the injury is more traumatic than we know. And you're one of the few people that has been consistent. When you were first on this show, you said, listen, he's damaged goods. Obviously, Cleveland, they in the physical, his body showed to have more damage. They went back to Boston. Boston compensated them even more. But you thought that there was question if he'll ever return to the player that we had seen
at least this
the last 2 years. And for me, I'm only going to criticize him so much until I see the player. So when you're not the player, you see the frustration. He's also playing for a contract. He's in a new environment. Being in Cleveland is not the greatest environment. Even though you might think LeBron is the greatest player, they have had locker room problems for a number of years. It's hard to be on the team with LeBron with the amount of tension. And imagine where IT is in his career, his own personal struggle. So he thought he had a home in Boston. They gave up on him. Now he's going to Cleveland, and he's not healthy. So I'm just going to hold back some of the criticism because of what you told me, that he was injured far worse, and he might not never be the same type of player.
Well, I think. Let me just say, I think Isaiah can at some point get back to being the player. I don't think he can do it this year. I think there's too short a window for Isaiah Thomas to get back in the mix. But as much as look, physically, Isaiah's going to keep getting better. I mean, we can't say, look, he's coming back from a hip injury and it's going to take time, and then be surprised when it's taking time. Like, this is sort of, you got to give him until March to kind of see what he is as a player. The problem, and it's emerging as maybe as big a problem for Isaiah, is that he keeps acting like he's a Celtic. He keeps talking like he's a Celtic. And that's chafed a lot of people in that locker room.
Explain to me what that
means. Basically means, he's talking like he's the franchise player. He's the man on that team. He's saying stuff like, when the going gets tough, we kind of go our separate ways. He's just consistently talking after the game. He's calling out his teammates. He's like, that's not the kind of stuff you do when you first come to a team. You can get away with doing that in Boston. They didn't love it all the time when we did that in Boston either. But you can get away with doing that in Boston with the franchise player. When you're in Cleveland and LeBron's the man and Kevin Love's number 2, it doesn't rub players the right way when you talk like that.
And the reason I agree with you, Chris, that I can give him the benefit of the doubt for the on-the-court stuff because of the injury. And I talked about emotionally all the things he went through in the last 9 months. Tragically off the court and the emotions of leaving cities. I get that. But you need some self-awareness to know that given all those things, I am playing the worst basketball of my life. So I am not the proper vessel for criticism.
Several other Cavs are too. Shumpert's hurt. Mm-hmm. D. Rose is barely playable. Mm-hmm. D. Wade is old. Mm-hmm. All right.
JR's been terrible. Jay Crowder's been terrible. Those guys aren't saying those things, though. Those guys, if JR was out here saying, we go our separate ways, Ty Lue's not drawing up the right plays, Kevin Love, you really sick, then those guys, at least, while they're not playing well, are quiet about it. And, by the way, not Jay Crowder, but JR or Tristan, who hasn't played well, those guys at least were part of a championship team.
All those guys have contracts, too. JR got paid. Mm-hmm. Tristan got paid. So when you're under the pressure, like, this is real, all right? You're coming from an injury. That's real. Him getting adjusting to a new environment. That's real. What he went through with his sister and Boston giving up on him. Those are all things that lead you to make questionable decisions. And he's trying to survive. That's why he would say, man, when things get tough. So you start to see those things when professionally you're not happy or you're not healthy on the court.
Meanwhile, Chris, 3 o'clock is quickly approaching. We usually around this time, at least a couple days before, you start hearing things. We're not hearing much. Is this the kind of thing where maybe by 2:58 some big deal is going to kind of drop in the Cavs' laps? Or if we don't hear anything by now, it looks like it is what it is?
I don't think so. and this is basically league-wide as well. I don't think anything major happens before the deadline. I do think that there is a high degree of probability that they get George Hill. I think Sacramento's trying to bleed them a little bit. I think the Kings, with De'Aaron Fox, the way he's emerged, they'd like to get off George Hill's contract for next season. I think that probably gets done before 3. But one thing that's stopping teams from making any significant offer, including Cleveland, is that there's a strong feeling that the buyout market this year is going to be more robust than it's ever been before. Because, we know the top of the draft, what that looks like. And we know next year the lottery rules change. So this is the year that teams are bottoming out. Now, the NBA said, look, we're monitoring you guys with how you're tanking. You can't sit players. That doesn't mean they can't cut guys. That doesn't mean they can't just waive guys. So teams like New York, teams like Atlanta, teams at the bottom that are chasing that top pick.
Who are a handful of these players that we might see come available?
It's tough to figure out. I mean, Marco Bellinelli, Ersan Ilyasova. Like, there are guys, maybe New York, Courtney Lee. Like, there are some guys. It depends on how much money guys are willing to leave on the table. But because teams
DeMarre Carroll is a guy.
DeMarre Carroll, possibly. But because teams are trying to have that race to the bottom, they could go to a lot of players and say, we'll buy you out. So why would a team consider, say, a first-round pick for Tyreek Evans if they can get somebody comparable for free in a couple of weeks?
And lastly, quickly, because teams are going to be racing to that bottom, that Nets pick that you have to hold on to, that's right now 7th overall, easily could become 8th. 9th, because the Nets have no incentive to tank. Everyone else has incentive to tank.
Wait, are we agreeing? Like,
what?
We
No, we're not agreeing at all. They shouldn't.
I've been saying the Nets are going to finish 11th. That's my prediction.
They should trade the Nets pick.
I agree.
You got to hold on to
my
it.
only course of action.
Colin Sexton out of Alabama is going to save the team after LeBron leaves. Tremendous saying.
OKC on Tuesday, Paul George played lights out against the Warriors, scoring 38 points in a Thunder win. Now, despite being long rumored to be heading to the Lakers next season, George seems to be enjoying playing in OKC. He says, quote, I'm happy here. I'm happy with this group. Nick, is there any reason George would leave Oklahoma City?
I mean, I can't think of it at this point. And I'm glad he is in Oklahoma City and fully healthy after a few years ago when he had broken the leg. Took him really a year to get better from that, because now that he is back playing relevant basketball games on a relevant team, we are reminded what a great player this guy is. And if he leaves there to go to Los Angeles, he will once again return to where he was the last couple years in Indiana, which is a really good player on a team that doesn't matter. And I like watching Paul George in high leverage situations. I like watching one of the best offensive and defensive players in the league play in these marquee, nationally televised high leverage games. Like, I hope he does stay. He and Russ, this is the type of duo that before we saw what Golden State did with Durant, we were used Russ and KD. Now Russ and Paul George, LeBron and Wade, Steph and Clay, the 2 stars on one team with some good players around them. See how far we can go. I like watching that type of basketball. I like watching Paul George on a really good team. So I don't know why he would leave. I hope he doesn't leave to go to the Lakers, who to me are years away from being a relevant basketball team.
Paul George is starting to find out what a lot of people have and what people were surprised about Kevin Durant. OKC is a franchise. They treat their players as good as any franchise. Where they play is a home arena. They still have one of the best home records, and they're still trying to figure each other out. This is not the best Carmelo Anthony, so they really only have 2 stars. The thing that I liked the most about his comments were maybe it will change people's perception of Russ. That people don't want to play with him. So seeing another superstar strive in Paul George, because he is a phenomenal basketball player. He's got length. He can shoot. He's got a mid-range games. He can play above the rim. He leads the NBA in assists. Like, what he adds to a team. I heard an interview when they were on national TV the other day, and he told Billy Donovan, and I've never heard a superstar tell a coach this, that he didn't need him to run any plays for him, that he could get his offense off the flow of the game and off of other people. Be concerned about the other players and run plays for them. That's something that I had never heard. And when you start to see and hear things like that, those are the kind of players you want to build a franchise around. Those are the kind of players that deserve a supermax contract. Because if you have the cornerstone of Russ and Paul George, you'd be surprised at other free agents. If that market out there, free agency, is not what players thought it would be. Man, I'll take a little less money because I got a real chance to win in the West. You don't have to just go to Golden State or San Antonio. You can join them and be a part of something that's really, really special.
And the other reason I'm so excited and glad Paul George is having a great year, arguably the best year of his career. I mean, he's shooting an absurd 43% from three. He's averaging a career high in steals. He's having his most efficient offensive season, is because Paul George this year, his production was going to be something of a referendum on Russ. Because we saw KD leave, and a lot of people blamed Russ for that. We then saw the team last year revolve exclusively around Russ, and there was some thought, hey, that's the way you have to work when you have this guy.
It made him look selfish.
It made him look selfish.
The triple-doubles, tying Oscar Robertson's record.
Breaking it.
Yes, it made him look selfish because people were like, well, they were still holding KD leaving against him.
And then at the beginning of this year, when you saw Victor Oladipo, who was on the team, go somewhere else and thrive, and you saw this team struggling, a lot of this was falling on Russell's head. And a lot of people were saying, see, Russ he's a stat stuffer, but the way he plays is a non-winning brand of basketball. And now seeing he and Paul George work well together, seeing the team play well together, I'm happy with that because I love watching Russ, and I just like Russ as a player.
And it's helped both of their stocks and both of their brands, I think, being able to play well with each other like this. But do you think his decision is going to come down to how far the Thunder goes? How deep the Thunder goes into the playoffs?
I think his overall experience is what he's going to judge it on. And I believe he's having a good experience. I believe it will only get better in the competitive situations in the playoffs. No, because if he goes to the Lakers, what's he going there for?
Home.
Well, okay, but they're not going to win.
No, but
that would be the one reason.
The only reason
would be to go home.
That's why he would go.
I think the winning part in the competitive situations are far more important than being at home. You can be home half the year compared to being at a loser the whole time around, and I believe that weighs on players.
I hope that's the case with Paul George. Listen, he can do wherever he wants. I really hope, as a basketball fan, he stays in Oklahoma City. I want to see how far this team can go. And Sam Presti's a hell of a general manager. His ability to find other players if they don't get it done this year to add to the team like you're alluding to, I trust him as much as I trust just about any GM in the sport.
Fun team to watch right now. Back here on First Things First, Chris Mannix is here. Welcome back.
Good to see you, brother.
Pleasure.
What? Don't shake his hand.
Fake enthusiasm.
I know.
I'm excited to see him.
Yeah. We have pre-segment fireworks, and then we have segment fireworks, and then when we go off there, we have post-segment fireworks. So we're going to focus on the actual fireworks now. 6.5 hours away from the NBA trade deadline, the Cavs may have won in dramatic fashion last night, but they're still rumored to be looking to improve their roster. They're not the only team hoping to make a move today, though. Chris, which contender do you think is most likely to make a big trade? And I know you said earlier there aren't a ton of rumors out there, but
yeah, it depends on what you mean by big, right? I mean, is it a deal that gets you? Look,
changes the playoff.
Whoever gets Tyreek Evans probably gets an impact player. Tyreek Evans having his best season as a pro. He's a versatile guy. He's shooting close to 40% from three. He's going to have an impact if it's with a Boston, if it's with a Washington, a Philadelphia. I look at that. But the team I think that needs to make a deal is Oklahoma City. And Oklahoma City over the last, 3 or 4 days has really been canvassing the league looking for that wing defender. Losing Andre Roberson
a huge
really hurts Oklahoma City. They needed him to be that defensive player. And prior to the Golden State game, they were really struggling in the aftermath of that injury. They're hoping to poach somebody. They don't have a lot of assets, no first-round draft pick this year to deal, not a lot of pieces outside of their core. But if you're looking at a team that could go from maybe a first-round exit to the conference finals based on one player, I think Oklahoma City might be.
So Avery Bradley?
Avery Bradley would be a good fit there. Jonathan Simmons with Orlando. Orlando might have a fire sale at some point. He would be a good fit there. Somebody that could step in and kind of play that Roberson role.
I mean, you say at some point, like they got 6 hours to have it, and he seems to have this fire sale. Do you think DeAndre Jordan is staying in place?
That's a great question. It's the biggest question out there right now. The Clippers have been telling teams, and they told teams before the Lou Williams extension, that if you don't make us an offer that we love for Lou Williams and DeAndre Jordan, we're not making this deal. Now, a lot of teams didn't believe them. A lot of teams said, no, they're going to trade Lou Williams. They turn around, they extend him. So because of that evidence, I start to think that the Clippers are serious How about keeping Jordan in the fold? One team I'd keep an eye on with DeAndre Jordan, that's Washington. The Wizards need to make a deal. The Wizards, with that roster, they're a second-round team. They're going to get beat by somebody in the second round of the playoffs, and they're capped out of the next few years, so they can't significantly upgrade that roster via free agency. They've got a couple of pieces there. They've got Marcin Gortat, who's got 1 year left in his deal. They've got Kelly Oubre, who's a very nice young player coming into his own. The Clippers have long said, and again, this is something I've been reluctant to believe. But the Clippers have long said, as we rebuild, we're not going to bottom out. We're not going to become the Philadelphia 76ers. A Kelly Oubre, Marcin Gortat center deal makes some sense for the Clippers and makes a lot of sense for Washington because it shakes up the team a little bit and makes them a little bit of, I think, a better team.
All right, let's talk about the 3 teams in the West, other than Oklahoma City, that have the best odds right now to win a title. Golden State, Houston, and San Antonio. Do you see anything from any of them? Houston, Cece and I watched them in person the other night, man. I can't find a hole on the roster. It's not like I'm like, man, they really need the wing defender. No, they have Luke Richard and Mbah a Moute. Man, they really could use a backup big man. Nah, like they play Clint Capella and then they go small. I can't find what they would need. Golden State obviously doesn't seem to need a lot. Any of those teams, those 2 or San Antonio, you see making a move?
No, I mean, look, the Rockets are always active because it's Daryl Morey and he can't sit still for more than an hour before trying to make a deal. But if the Rockets were going to do anything, I think they might be a seller. I mean, they've been dangling Ryan Anderson out there, and they've been doing that for the last couple of years. Not because they don't like Ryan Anderson. He's been a big part of what they do this year.
He's overpaid.
But he is overpaid. And the Rockets are trying to clear cap space for next summer. So would they surrender a player that helps them this year for the flexibility to go out and get maybe LeBron James next summer? I think that's something they're looking for. But they're in a tough spot, too, in terms of assets.
Yeah, and the Rockets, though, they found Gerald Green. I mean, my goodness. I mean, that gives them more flexibility. Do you see any other team, either through buyout, being able to add that type of firepower? We know that we're talking about wing defenders, but also people are looking for people who can score.
Yeah.
Do you look for anyone getting bought out of their contract that we might not be on our radar right now?
Well, it's teams like, you look at Orlando with Elfrid Payton, Mario Hezonja. There's a new front office down there. They're not wed to any of them.
And you mentioned Simmons, who looked like George Gervin.
Though, but
he looked like George Gervin against the Cavs.
I mean, my really good third quarter.
If you show that highlight right there, someone is definitely going to deal for him.
Well, I mean, look, Orlando's average 115 points per game against the Cavs this year. That's a really tough offensive team.
By the way, I just want to tell our producers then get this stuff ready. Once we're done talking about the trade deadline, we're going to spend a few minutes on this Cavs discussion. But go ahead.
To answer your question about the buyout market, it's tough to get a full read on it yet because it always depends on what guys are willing to leave on the table. But a team like Boston's going to get somebody. They are, because players are going to want to go someplace they can win. Boston's got a role for them coming off the bench. They're going to get somebody in that buyout mix that's going to flesh out that bench.
Wait, hold on. I want to stay on Boston for a moment. Boston just added Greg Monroe, right?
Yes.
They were pre-Greg Monroe. They were the team that's going to win the East.
Yes.
Okay. So they added Greg Monroe. They might have Gordon Hayward coming back. Last time you told us that, he's shooting set jump shots like Bob Cousy, few weeks away from playing in NBA games. So how is Boston going to find minutes? There's still only what's.
I mean, they're not that deep.
No.
I mean, they can use some help.
There's only, but they were already going to win the East. They added Greg Monroe.
That don't mean there's not minutes available.
So who are the type? I'm just curious. The types of guys is Marcus Smart getting traded away?
I'm
asking.
He's asking in answers.
Is Marcus Smart getting traded away?
No, he's not getting traded away, largely because nobody's given up a first-round pick for a guy that's had some off-the-court issues, plus is in the last year of his contract. Boston's bench is streaky. Terry Rozier had a phenomenal stretch with Kyrie Irving out. Smart, though, his jump shot ebbs and flows. They're looking for that guy who can be a consistent three-point shooter, who can flesh out that bench. Greg Monroe does help them, though. Greg Monroe is not a defensive player, but he's an offensive player. And now with Greg Monroe, you might have yourself a tent-pole kind of fixture in the low post that you can play through with that second unit, which will allow you, by the way, to play Kyrie Irving and Al Horford more minutes together and not worrying about staggering those minutes.
Guys, I sold fireworks, and all you've done is asked and answered.
No. Well, listen, Mannix wears 2 hats. He wears his professional NBA reporter hat,
right?
And then he wears the hat he wears to bed with his Celtics pajamas, and all that.
Luck.
And so that
next to your LeBron pullout.
We were doing the NBA because it's the trade deadline, trying to figure out what's going on, and so we can discuss because you were the game from last night.
Yeah,
you were along with my partner Chris Carter. You guys were very unimpressed with the Cavs win against the Timberwolves, correct? Their defensive, whatever it was.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm unimpressed, but I'm going to say that I've seen too much bad basketball to say that, wow, they've turned the corner. No, I'm not going to say. I didn't see that last night. I mean, they did give up 100 and how many?
138.
Oh, 138.
Maddox, did they turn a corner?
No. What corner? Where's the corner? I can't even see the corner right now. 58% from the field for Minnesota. 58% from three. How does that get it done? You mock me with saying Orlando averaged 115 points per game. That is a bottom third in the NBA offensive team that has run roughshod over the Cavs over 4 games this season. I mean, what do you're like, what's that old parable about the guy that dies and goes to heaven and says, God, why didn't you save me? Well, I sent you a boat, a car, like all that stuff.
Yeah.
This is you. This is seriously you. How much evidence do you need to see to think that the Cavaliers are not going to advance deep into the playoffs?
That's so
Cavaliers
funny.
Are not going to win.
That's
what do you need to see? We're in early February. Do you need to get to March and see this team giving up 140 points?
This is what I was
blitzed by teams on a regular basis. What do you need to see?
Okay, it's so funny you bring up the parable about the God sent you the boat, sent you the car. What do you need to see? What do you and so many of your colleagues in the media need to see to realize it is always a bad bet in January and February to sell your LeBron James stock?
Yes.
That last year, can we stop pretending like last year this wasn't happening? Can we stop pretending like last year people weren't saying Boston could be the 1 seed? They
still did have Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love and LeBron.
Well, they will have Kevin Love before the playoffs start. They still do have LeBron. They don't have Kyrie anymore. But what Boston had last year was a player in IT that was playing essentially at Kyrie's level. IT is not Kyrie's level of player, but
I would say the majority of the people didn't believe that Boston was going to beat the Cavs last year.
I did not. I said that last year. I wrote that the Celtics were coming. They were definitely not there this year. But okay, you say you're right. January, this stuff happens to the Cavs every single year. It's now February. What if this keeps going in March? What if the Cavaliers over the last few years have built some momentum going into the playoffs each and every year.
Right, and for some reason, a game, I understand the defense wasn't good last night, but a game where they hold on, but I'm talking about last night for a second. A game where they score 140 against one of the better teams in the Western Conference is somehow an indictment on where they are. A game where they...
So last night changed your impression because you were concerned in Orlando the night before.
Minnesota, most of the season, has been a horrendous defensive team.
Okay, but they've been. Am I crazy that they have right now? Am I making this up right now? They have one of the 6 best records in the NBA.
Yes.
Okay, so they've been, despite their defense, whatever it is, somehow they've gotten to 34 and 23, right? And yesterday against Orlando, I said they were awful against Orlando. I said they need to make a trade if they want to have a chance to win a championship.
So what are you going to do when they don't make a big trade? Because they're not. They're not going to trade the Brooklyn pick. Okay. So brace yourself for tomorrow.
Okay,
right?
well, I'm not certain they won't trade the Brooklyn pick.
They're not going to trade the Brooklyn pick.
Okay, so we'll see if they'll trade the Brooklyn pick or not. Cece.
Well, you've made it very clear.
Let's just say hypothetically. We got our own show. We can do a hypothetical question.
I'm all for hypothetical.
What are you going to do when they don't trade the Brooklyn pick?
I won't think they'll win the title. I'll still think they'll win the East. Like, the idea that we go through this every year.
No, we don't, Nick.
What?
No, we don't. This is the year, man. All right? Now, just like you predicted Tom Brady.
CC.
Oh, no. Remember you predicted that? Mm-hmm. Tom Brady, this is the year. No, this is the year for LeBron.
Okay.
This is the year that he does not make it to the final.
Look, again, I'm trying to see what evidence you need to see to change your opinion on all this. If they go into Boston on Sunday and get smoked on Sunday afternoon, national TV,
what evidence do I need to see? I need to see them play.
Does he actually have to lose a game 7 in the playoffs?
They would have to be eliminated.
Happen? Yeah. Because all good things come to an end. Shaq and Kobe weren't supposed to lose to the Pistons. I mean, all great teams, great dynasties, they have an end point. Okay. And this, to me, in the Eastern Conference, is the Cavaliers.
Okay, first of all, I want to make this clear. The Cavs are not a great team, nor are they a great dynasty. What they do have, though, is a great player.
LeBron, 7 straight years.
He is a walking personal dynasty, but those 2 of those titles and 4 of those finals were with a different organization. But, Cece, you say we don't do this every year. Every year LeBron's been back with the Cavs. There have been questions about will they make the finals. Year 1, they were below 500 through 40 games.
We weren't doing this, but you can take us as being the national media, all right? There was not this concern in Cleveland. It was a different type of concern. And they had not won a championship, Nick, all right? They were they were putting the team back together. So the expectations on LeBron in the first year are not what they were this year.
Sure, but when I say it happens every year, in the first year, they struggled for 40 games. In the second year, they fired their coach. And in the third year, we can do revisionist history as if people last year, I know you weren't because we were watching the games together, but as if people last year were not saying this is the year that the Celtics can come out of the East. Yes, they were.
Well,
that was maybe.
I can only be responsible for myself, and I can only represent my opinion.
This is the first year that I think that anyone has credibly said the Cavs can get beat in the playoffs. I don't think anyone believed in Boston last year. More people believed in Toronto last year than believed in Boston. They got smoked in 4 games after the Ibaka trade. This year, it's not just Boston. Boston went up to Toronto the other night and got blitzed. That Raptors team is the best they've been in the last 3 years. There are teams in the Eastern Conference. We don't know what Milwaukee's going to look like with Parker back, how he fits into the mix. This is going to be a street fight for the Cavaliers from second round on.
Why are we year one there? Atlanta won 60 games, had 4 All-Stars. People weren't saying it then?
No.
Year 2 there.
Nobody believed Atlanta was good.
Okay.
I didn't. I mean, not nobody.
I cannot wait until next season. Now, LeBron probably won't be with the Cavs. But next season, when people are like, well, and no one doubted they'd make it last year. No one's ever doubted, but this is the year. Okay. I'm excited for it.
I'm just wondering.
What I will say, Jenna, in a monotone voice is,
I
doubted them,
it all in.
and they made it to the finals, and they still got jacked by somebody coming out the West.
I just don't know what evidence. I just don't know when do you start to think, okay, it's over? When do you start to think, all right, this is bad? Does it actually have to happen in the playoffs?
Yeah, well, we'll see.
This was good, guys. That's what I built. That's what I wanted. I feel bad. I want to send you a life raft or something. I feel like it was a little tilted
I'm fine.
here.
I mean, no. I can't wait. Because the great thing is we have video of all this.
Yes.
So when the Celtics get bounced by Milwaukee in round 2 and don't even get to play them.
Much more first things first next, right after this. All right, little football news now.
Some enthusiasm in your voice on the highlights.
Yesterday was supposed to be the day Josh McDaniels was introduced.
This might be
That's why you were looking at me. Okay, I got it. I'll do better next time.
All right,
Jenna,
yesterday was supposed to be the day Josh McDaniels was introduced as the new head coach of the Colts. Instead, he decided to stay in New England after a mysterious meeting with Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft. Now, according to reports, Bill Belichick said he will, quote, open his world to Josh McDaniels. Shining, shimmering, splendid. Nick, does the McDaniels decision make more sense to you now that I sang that sentence?
I mean, a little bit more. If Bill Belichick came to him, because Peter King, as we mentioned yesterday, reported Josh McDaniels went back to Gillette to clean out his office. He ended up in a meeting with Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick. He walked into that meeting as the upcoming head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. He walked out of that meeting as the current offensive coordinator for the New England Patriots. And we couldn't figure out what it was. I said I felt there had to be some type of promise that he is the head coach in waiting from Robert Kraft. But that didn't have much to do with what Bill Belichick could have told him. I thought maybe Belichick gave him a timeline of how much longer he's going to coach there. Turns out what Belichick also said was, I have been treating you as a subordinate.
Well, you don't know that he told him he gave him a date.
No. I didn't. If I said that I know.
Said, and he told him.
Okay, so correct. I don't know that he told him and gave him a date. I should make that clear. But what we do now know is he told him something along the lines of, our relationship is going to change. From where it had been, at least the way I read it, is a subordinate boss relationship where our relationship is what you can do for me, changing to a relationship of what we can do for each other. And that, along with them selling him on, again, according to Peter King, his young children being able to stay in the same community for years and years and years in New England, was enough to get him to stay there. I know that Belichick all of a sudden adjusting the way their relationship goes, I feel like it rubs you the wrong way because it's not how you're wired. But I think that's what happened.
I just think also in the coaching business, or just in the professional business at large, you and I met through Fox Sports. And in them hiring me, I had to make a commitment, not only to do the show, but I had to make a commitment to your family. Now, along the way, being the kind of person I am, I have offers all the time. But in light of that, I still consider my TV family, the most important thing. Outside of my relationship with Sue, I have offers all the time. But in light of that, I still consider my TV family the most important thing. Outside of my relationship with Sue, I have offers all the time. But in light of that, I still consider my TV family the most important thing. Outside of my relationship with Sue, I have offers all the time. But in light of that, I still consider my TV family the most important thing. Outside of my relationship with Sue, I have offers all the time. But in light of that, I still consider my TV family the most important thing. Outside of my relationship with Sue, I have offers all the time. But in light of that, I still consider my TV family the most important thing. Outside of my relationship with Sue, I have offers all the time. But in light of that, I still consider my TV family the most important thing. Outside of my relationship with Sue, I have offers all the time. But in light of that, I still consider my TV family the most important thing. Outside of my relationship with Sue, I have offers all the time. But in light of that, I still consider my TV family the most important thing what you guys are doing and your family, it's important to me. That's the reason why I asked, how's your family doing? It's not because I don't have anything else better to talk about. It's because I really care. And when you go and hire, you pick guys off of other staffs and you tell them, man, I got your back. I'm getting ready to run an organization and you're getting ready to work for me. So they go home and tell their spouse or significant other and their kids that their kids are getting ready to move. So obviously, Bill Belichick, the Josh McDaniels kids are more important than anybody else's kids. And they only got good schools only in New England. Like they don't have good private schools other places. But the thing that's most puzzling to me was through this whole interview process, it goes throughout the playoffs. So they had a bye week. Most of the coaches, especially with the number one seeds, they do their interviewing during the bye week. So Josh was able to, I'm sure that he let Belichick know, I'm leaving the building or someone's coming to town, we're going to interview. And I'm sure that Belichick and New England staff helped him and Matt Patricia prep for these interviews. Like these are normal things. So when I go back into the building, I'm getting ready to leave. I'm the Colts head coach. You start telling me stuff that you weren't telling me before. I thought you were mentoring me before. Like, so now what has changed? So now you're getting ready to open up this certain part of your brain and let me see part of that? Like, I've been here working for you. Like, this is not my first stint with you. This is my second stint with you. I've already been a failed head coach. So you knew I was going through this interview process and you weren't preparing me? So that to me right there, I believe is disingenuous. I believe it's about control, and I believe Josh McDaniel, the promise that he made to those other assistant coaches, like, man, if you don't have anything outside of your word, like, I don't.
Well, I know we're going to spend more time on the McDaniels part of it because Tony Dungy had some comments to say on that. I know we're going to, but on the Belichick thing, I find interesting because you seemed legitimately bothered that Bill Belichick, prior to Josh McDaniels getting ready to walk out the door, was not doing everything he could to teach Josh McDaniels. You seem legitimately...
I mean, Belichick is a teacher. When you sit in a Bill Belichick meeting, do you think he is not dropping every football wisdom on those players to try to make them prepared? We see them. They come up with formations. They do things that we have never seen before, or they do it better than other people that we have seen it before. So as far as his coaches, now he's not pouring into them to make them better coaches all the way around. Well, maybe that's the reason why Charlie Weiss failed, Mangini failed, like all these other, Romeo Cornell, he failed. Maybe that's the reason why.
But do you think that just imparting this wisdom upon him, whether it be head coaching wisdom, general manager wisdom, salary cap wisdom, is that enough to entice someone to say? Do you think that that there has to be something else? I think that's why we're dangling this carrot that no one knows for sure yet of, hey, there's going to be a certain timeline of when. Because is that enough to say I'm going to put a head coaching
Bill Belichick
job
has
behind
not
me?
given us any indication. I tell you and Nick this repeatedly. He has not given us any indication that he's not going to coach the Patriots. So I don't know why we keep throwing that part out there as if we know. We don't know that. Tom Brady has consistently said that he was going to play, which would lead to why would Bill Belichick walk away when Tom Brady's going to be there?
So is the wisdom part enough, do you think, to get him to stay? Like, what was it?
I mean, obviously it was, unless there was something else.
Well, I think the something else is, I think Robert Kraft, without necessarily giving him a timeline, has led Josh McDaniels to believe Belichick will teach you his tricks, whatever it is, and you will be the next head coach, whether that's in, CeCe, 1 year or 6 years,
whatever it is.
that you'll be the next guy. But the part that I know aggravates you is that Belichick seems to teach his players everything because it serves him, and teaches coaches only certain things because why teach them more? It doesn't serve me. I don't know. The two Bills.
Every talented player I've ever been with, I knew that I was with them for a limited amount of time. When Larry Fitzgerald was in my life, I knew it would be limited because they're talented people. Talented people don't stay with you forever. Randy Moss and I have only played 4 years together. People think that we played 12 years. You know the reason why? Because I poured everything into him. I wasn't man, you know something, Randy? I'm going to keep this little bit over here to myself. And then now we're going to be teammates in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. You know the reason why? Because I gave him everything that I had every day that I had. I just don't understand the control aspect. When you are a teacher, Josh is the student. Teach him.
See, and I think that is what I think you are the outlier there. Just for the record, I think most people in professional relationships look at their subordinate as if the subordinate's job is to make my job easier. Not my job is also to help teach the subordinate how to one day take my job. I don't think most people look at it that way. I think we'd be better off if more people looked at it that way. But I know that I have worked in places where people have looked at me as a threat, and they have not been interested at all in teaching me how to do this, how to do that. So now Belichick learned from Parcells. He got this gift from Parcells. They talk about in that documentary that just came out. Belichick now, I guess, for the first time, is going to share it with somebody else.
All right, finally to the
Not bad for a black guy.
Aaron Rodgers.
Keta wrote it, by the way. I found out. Keta gets the blame, not Jenna Wolf.
Aaron Rodgers will spend the offseason rehabbing his surgically repaired collarbone, but he still has high hopes for the 2018 season. When asked about winning another MVP, Rodgers said, I plan on doing that again because the last time he broke his collarbone, he came back and won MVP honors. So logic dictates, ... CC, what do you think? Can Rodgers win another MVP?
Oh, definitely. As long as Aaron Rodgers got his right arm. Yeah, he's definitely got a chance to win MVP. Aaron Rodgers, I like the fact that after being injured, named kind of out of the limelight, he lets people know I'm working hard. So to me, his mind is in the right place. That's the kind of player that we like to see. Man, this was an awful year for injuries. J.J. Watt, OBJ, Aaron Rodgers, just on and on. Star players getting hurt, but none is better than Aaron Rodgers. And yes, I do believe he'll get at least one more MVP. They've changed some coaching stuff around, so it is going to be a challenge for him. They made some front office moves there in Green Bay. It's going to be interesting how they participate in free agency and what they do in the upcoming draft.
Listen, it is not Aaron Rodgers' job to worry about the long-term cap situation of the Green Bay Packers. It is Aaron Rodgers' job to worry about, can we win a championship right now while I am the best player in the league? The Packers already have decided, hey, you don't get to comment on our coaching decisions. We're getting rid of your quarterback coach and not even consulting you about it, even though you like him. Here's what I know Aaron Rodgers would like them to do. It's what CeCe alluded to. At least dip a toe in, maybe a whole foot, maybe down to mid-shin in the free agency pool.
Yes.
Where they have been for years and years and years. You can list off the top of your head the big free agents they brought in. Oh, remember the time they brought in Julius Peppers? How exciting that was, because they don't typically do that. Now, what they have done is let some quality players they drafted walk out the door. Devon House, see you later. When Charles Woodson still had some time left, see you later. So you cannot squander the opportunity you have when you have a player this talented. I would argue only having been to one Super Bowl in Aaron Rodgers' tenure is a massive underachievement by the franchise as a whole. I don't blame Aaron for that. Right. I know we love to blame quarterbacks. I don't blame him for that.
And that's also why it's important for him, if he's not going to win them Super Bowls, he better win some MVPs. And I like the fact of his wording. I always get caught up in what they say. He said, I want to win. It wasn't like, I expect to win, or I believe they're going to give me one. He said, I want to win. So for me, that means he's going to prepare the right way to put himself in position. And for this, if he wins MVP, that means the team is in championship position.
And one note that CeCe mentioned, I don't want it to get glossed over, that if they're not going to win championships, you need to win the MVPs. There are two paths to becoming a Pantheon quarterback. Multiple rings, for example, that's how John Elway got there, right? John Elway's actual stats are not unbelievable, but he went to 5 Super Bowls, won 2 of them. That's why he's a Pantheon guy. The other way is just overwhelming numbers. That's how Dan Marino got there, even though he only played in the 1 Super Bowl. Rodgers knows, man, I can't control the defense. I evidently can't even control my coaching staff. What I can control is how many years I throw for 4,500 yards, 35 touchdowns.
It's hard to imagine, though, that they are going to dip too deeply into free agency when there's no history of them doing it in the last
But they changed some of their decision making.
Right, so now they might. Get your sensible shoes on, Eagles fans. Undoubtedly, the biggest parade through your city in recent memory is happening today. Eagles will be celebrating their first ever Super Bowl title through the city of brotherly love. And while Philadelphia played the underdog card all playoffs, Doug Pederson wants to establish a dynasty of his own. Here's his message to the team.
I said, if you want, get used to this. This is the new norm in Philadelphia, playing, and hopefully playing into February every year. It's the new norm. So get used to it. Short off seasons, and let's do that. And the guys that want to be a part of that, we'll do that. They'll want to be here, and I think everybody does want to be here. But as you know, the nature of the business is you can't keep everybody. It's just the way it goes. And but the ones that are here, my mindset is to be back again.
Doug Pederson is willing it into existence that this is the new norm in Philadelphia. CeCe, how are the Eagles set up for the future?
They've done a great job. They made a tremendous mistake when they gave Chip Kelly all the power. But keeping Howie Roseman on and giving Howie Roseman that power back, we've seen him and Doug work in conjunction. We saw with the Jay Ajayi trade. Howie comes to him during the day, asked him, hey, what do you think about this player? Would you like him? He's like, heck yeah, absolutely. I didn't think he'd be available. So you know that they're working together to build this roster. They have an opportunity in the next 3 years, and it's very important they take advantage of it. That is when their rookie quarterback is on his rookie contract. So they have 3 more years. This is the second year in a 5-year deal. They'll pick up the option after the 4th year. So in this 3-year window, they're going to have to try to do what Seattle couldn't do, and that was win either 2 or 3 Super Bowls. Seattle was in position. Same kind of makeup of a team, but, Russell was on his rookie contract. They put all their money in their defensive players. Marshawn Lynch was running the ball for him. Doug Baldwin and all these complimentary receivers, they weren't making a big money, so the team was able to flourish. But they went through that window. They only got 1 Super Bowl. So now it's how many can Philadelphia put themselves in position to do? They have a stud quarterback, and we haven't seen him play in 2 months. And his name is Carson Wentz. It is not Nick Foles. They have a perfect backup, a guy on the team who they've had success with. So even if this comes up next year, man, the guys on the team, the amount of confidence they will have, they won't have to go through 3 games, which they had to this year, to be able to get Nick Foles and the offensive coordinator. But also, Frank Wright, they might lose him. So you have to be able to, take advantage of this window. This team is not going to be the same in 2018, but Carson Wentz will be back. I believe their wide receiving core, they had a tremendous year compared to the disappointing year they had in 2016. So I believe it's an open window that they could win another 1 in the next 3 years. That would be 2 and 4. That is a modern-day dynasty. So I believe it. I believe that the Eagles are capable of doing this.
You mentioned the wide receivers. Here's what the wide receivers have in common, the entire wide receiving core. They're all under contract for next year. The entire offensive line, they're all under contract for next year. The D-line, all but one.
Now, Jason Peters might have to take a reduction in salary.
Absolutely.
Because I think he's the highest paid one.
He's their highest paid offensive lineman. Absolutely. Yes. He makes $12 million. Lane Johnson makes $12 million as well. Look at this, CeCe. This is not a depth chart. Mm-hmm. That is the cap sheet for next year. All of those guys are under contract. Now, that's why Philadelphia, we were talking about Green Bay, Philadelphia will not be participating in free agency. Of the 32 NFL teams, they are 32nd in available cap space. They do not have the ability to go get a lot of guys.
They don't need a lot of guys.
But they don't need a lot of guys. They're losing Darren Sproles. He's their highest paid leaving player. But he wasn't there this year. He broke his arm and tore his ACL in week 3. The one guy they are losing that is going to be a real loss for them, or I think will lose, is Patrick Robinson, a guy they got on a very cheap deal, less than $800,000 as kind of a prove-it deal. He'll probably go out and get paid. Maybe they replace him with their first-round pick, but they've got everybody coming back.
They have Sidney Jones, who they've been high on.
Yep.
He was injured this year, so they have him coming back.
He was their second-round pick this past year.
Yeah, so I believe he'll replace Robinson in the productivity there.
Okay, if they're pretty stacked at wide receivers, their O-line, their D-line, pick a position on this team you think they could use a little bit of help on next year.
I think the secondary was the one spot on the team that was not B+ or better.
Okay.
I thought their secondary, their linebacking core should get better with the middle linebacker coming back from his injury.
Yes.
You mentioned, though, one thing, CeCe, about the quarterback. They have a stud at quarterback. I have one thing we have not addressed that I'm curious your thoughts on. How much do you think Carson Wentz's injury? I know we believe in today you can rehab from it 100%. But do you think suffering that injury the way he suffered it will have any impact on his style of play moving forward? Because part of what made Carson Wentz the MVP candidate, the stud, was his athleticism, underrated because he's a kid from North Dakota State, and his ability to extend plays, the RPOs, those types of things. Coming off 2 torn ligaments and a broken leg that happened when he was extending a play, diving for the end zone. Do you think his style changes at all?
No, because it wasn't a traumatic hit. I mean, he broke a bone, but no, it's a normal NFL football play. He's not Johnny Manziel. He's not some undersized guy that got hit. He's not RG3, a guy who runs 4.3, who shatters his knee and shattered his confidence in the same. The reason why is because he plays the game with his head, too. He's a great athlete playing quarterback, but he can be a dominant pocket passer. If there's one position I'd like to see him improve,
tell me.
I'd like to see him get another wide receiver with some speed down the field.
Okay.
Torrey Smith, he is just not enough for me. At this point in his career, I believe he's lost a half of a step. He's still dependable, but I'd like to get one younger guy who can get down the field.
Are you going to the parade today?
In Philly?
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to make it.
Okay, you're not going to make it.
I'm not going to
because you got a taste of the fans.
I don't know if I'd be popular at the parade. I mean, I could make it, I suppose, after the show, but I'm going to let Philly have that. Are you going, Jenna?
I'm
you
not
spent time
going.
in Philadelphia.
I know.
Cece put on the dog mask.
I was trying to wonder if she was really wondering if we were going, or if it was like I did. Like, I mean,
you didn't know.
Do you think we actually might be going?
I thought you might go. You put on the dog mask. You're an adopted Philadelphia Eagle now. You were barking yippee-ki-yo.
They plenty of middle fingers. Though.
That is true.
I know. I mean, they know I played there. I stopped there. You know.
All right. Hey, everybody, Nick Wright here, and thank you so much for listening to the First Things First podcast. But I wanted to tell you about another podcast at Fox Sports that we are so excited about, and that is Alexi Lawless's State of the Union podcast. That's right, U.S. soccer legend Alexi Lawless will be partnering up with Fox soccer guru and researcher extraordinaire David Moss to review the top storylines in soccer across the globe. Each week, Alexi will give his State of the Union on American soccer as it rebuilds for the future. Subscribe and listen for free on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts right now. Now back to the show.
Welcome back. The Pittsburgh Steelers of next season are hoping to look just like the Pittsburgh Steelers of last season. The team says they want to extend both Ben Roethlisberger and Le'Veon Bell's contracts this offseason. Big Ben is 35, and 35 is the new 25 in the NFL. File that under apparently. Guys, should the Steelers give these two long-term deals, in your opinion?
Well, I don't know about both of them. There's only one of them contract who's expiring. That's Le'Veon Bell. Like, he has deserved a new contract. Ben, I'm not puzzled, but it's kind of it just draws my attention. Last offseason, after the season, he said he didn't know how much longer he wanted to play. Now, we know that him and Todd Haley didn't get along. They got rid of Todd Haley as offensive coordinator. Now he's telling the organization, you know something? Man, because the only way you bring up an extension is if you're saying, man, I'm feeling good. My body's feeling good. I believe I'm going to be able to play for several more years. It's a lot different than he sounded after last offseason. So for me, it's the team is trying to concentrate and has been negotiated with L. Bell publicly, even though the team only wants to do it privately. And now Ben, how he would throw his hand into the ring and be like, yeah, I would love a contract. Because I know the Steelers didn't say, you know something, we would love to sign Ben Roethlisberger. It's kind of like Ben offered this information compared to the Steelers.
Why would they? Big Ben doesn't have 1 year left on his deal. He has 2 years left on his deal. And he is, I understand that we have seen Drew Brees play at a very high level at 38, 39. Tom Brady made me look like a fool, played at an MVP level at age 40. I think it is fair to say those guys treat their bodies on and off the field a little better than Ben Roethlisberger has treated his on and off the field over the course of his career.
And you do have to take that in consideration. We just can't think that every guy is going to play, because he's a quarterback, into his 40s and everything.
Ben Roethlisberger, like, we know that he has more of, I will call it a social nightlife than those other guys. We also know from looking at him, now sometimes the extra pounds maybe serve as something of body armor for him because of the style in which he plays, but you don't need the body armor in your cheeks. And he is not in the greatest shape. So the idea that he is going to have one of these unprecedented or nearly unprecedented careers, I don't see the evidence to that. And we have also seen Ben, I don't know if you want to reward some of his commentary with a premature contract. Now, you might say, why would you reward some of the things Le'Veon has done? Well, he doesn't have a contract. Like, you're either going to franchise him again, he's going to be upset, it's going to be a very high number.
Or you could lose him.
Right, agree to a long-term deal, or he goes somewhere else. Big Ben's got nowhere else to go the next 2 years. And by the way, not that they would do this to a guy that's won 2 Super Bowls for him. They could have Ben Roethlisberger the rest of his career without ever getting him another deal. Like, he's got 2 years left on his deal.
Right.
He's never been franchised. Franchised him the first time. That's 3 years. You could even franchise him a second time. Like, so I just don't see any leverage point Big Ben would have.
What I might understand is a veteran quarterback like him coming to them and saying, I can give you a more friendly deal, give you a softer cap number, give you something else that they might extend him out maybe at the same number, not give him a bump up in pay. So if they went to him and said, you know something, Ben, we want to tear up your deal and give you a 4-year deal to give the team more cap space in 18, 19, 19, and 20. That's the only way I see a deal with Ben Roethlisberger.
What kind of numbers or years are we looking at here? I mean, he's got 2 years left. Have you seen him on the decline in the last couple of years, or do you feel like he could give you 2 more years of what he's given you the last 2 years?
Ben Roethlisberger probably played the best year of his career in 2014. 15, 16, 17 were down from there, but they were at the exact same level. Like 15, 16, and I didn't see any decline this year from last year or last year from the year before. I saw a decline in all 3 from that 1 year, but he's been around the same type of guy. So, no, I'm not worried that Ben next year is not going to be good. I just don't. Am I worried that if Ben in 3 years is going to be good? Am I worried how Ben's going to get along with the new offensive coordinator? Am I worried if Ben after next offseason is going to go back to, I don't know how much longer I want to play? Like, all of those things would concern me. Go ahead, CC.
My biggest concern is when they start talking about it, they start thinking about it. And when you start thinking about retirement, it ain't long before you start following that. Now, the guys that we have seen play at an elite level, even later in their career, they never talked about it. They always talked about even beyond what their career would be. And even before the quarterbacks we have now with Drew Brees and Tom Brady. I'm talking about Warren Moon. I'm talking about even Peyton Manning. Brett Favre. Like, these guys, man, they weren't going to quit. Brett couldn't make up his mind, but he didn't say he was going to quit.
Similar to what Roethlisberger said in Week 5 when he was like, I don't know how much I have left in me.
Well, even last season, I was more concerned about the end of last season. He said, I don't know how much I can play.
Brett's an outlier for a lot of reasons, not the least of which are
he's a freak of nature.
And I think Brett always knew he was going to play. I think Brett didn't
Brett could have played last Sunday if he wanted to, if they gave him the opportunity.
He would have run out there.
He would have run right out there.
I don't think Brett minded the ESPN setting up camp in front of his house. Ed Werder going down there. Oh, we're sending a chopper to get Brett. Like, Brett, and I don't blame him for that. I don't think he minded that. One question about El Bell before we move on. What would concern you more about giving Le'Veon a contract extension? The fact that last year he had over 400 touches, or the fact that he's one failed drug test away from a year out of football? Which of those two things, because they're both flags, which of those two flags are the one that you think would make you more hesitant to commit to him long term?
I mean, I'm not worried about the 400 carries because if you're a featured back, that's what you're going to get put on you. Like, that's what he should. That's how many carries. That's how many carries they need to put on him for them to be able to win. I know the drug program that you can come out of the program, so there is relief. If he stays in it and stays clean, then you can be relieved of the testing, and they take the testing back some. So there is some reward for staying clean. So I'm not concerned about the 400 carries. I'm probably a little more concerned about him and what he's done off the field, jeopardizing his career. So, yes, that's a real thing. Not because I made it up, but because what he's been involved in.
And I said 400 carries. 320 carries, 85 catches. So 400 touches on the year.
Quickly, of the two, who's going to get the long-term deal?
Man, I think
They have to sign him.
Okay.
They don't have to do anything with Ben.
I wouldn't be shocked if neither one. That if they leave Ben as is and that they franchise L. Bell one more time. I wouldn't be shocked by that.
I'm Jenna Wolf, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long.